Hey, what's up guys? I'm Jeff and welcome to the Centrist. So in today's episode, we're going to be discussing a very controversial topic, abortion. I felt this subject was topical and relevant for our second video on the channel, considering the fact that several states have passed new abortion laws just this year. We've had right-wing states like Texas and Idaho, and more recently Oklahoma, who have passed abortion laws to make it more restrictive. We've also had left-wing states like California, New Jersey, and Colorado, the state that I currently live in, and they've all passed laws to either protect current abortion rights or to extend abortion rights. So with multiple states from both sides of the aisle passing abortion laws, this has propelled the topic into the national conversation once again. Abortion has been one of the most important issues in American politics for quite some time, essentially ever since Roe v. Wade in 1973, and that essentially made abortion legal across the entire country. Now, to be exact, the Roe v. Wade ruling was essentially that it was unconstitutional to completely ban abortion, that right was protected under the 14th Amendment, and that a woman had the right to privacy from the government to manage her own health care. And that ruling was very much based on the 3 trimesters of pregnancy, so it did not make abortion legal through all 3 trimesters. Instead, it made it so that no state could make it illegal for the first trimester. So you absolutely had to provide abortion services. It had to be legal within all 50 states during the first trimester. Second trimester abortions were also made legal. However, you could add certain restrictions to them that you couldn't do with the first trimester. And then for the third trimester is essentially state-based, whatever the state wanted to do. So you could make them legal. Most states, I believe, and this could be inaccurate at this point because a lot of states this year have passed new abortion laws, and I have not been able to look at all of them. But last time I looked at this, it was only legal to get a third trimester abortion in 7 states, and Colorado was one of those 7 states. With the new abortion laws, that number might have increased. So ever since the Roe v. Wade ruling, the right wing has been attempting to overturn it. So basically since 1973, that's about 50 years now that the right wing has been attempting to put the old abortion laws back in place. And this is an effort that conservatives have failed in until recently when the new Texas law passed, where they have essentially made it illegal to get an abortion once you can detect a heart rate. Now, since the time when a heart rate can be detected can vary, that means that Texas hasn't banned abortion at a certain trimester or a certain week of the pregnancy. Instead, they have banned it once the fetus has reached a certain state. And now the success of the Texas law has encouraged other Republican states to pass their own abortion laws, with the most recent one as of this video being the Oklahoma law, which is essentially banned abortion in all trimesters with the exception of during rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. So despite the Supreme Court ruling in the past that it is unconstitutional to ban abortion in a state, the Republicans are still doing it. And it seems that they're going to continue to do so, and we can expect that more Republican states will likely pass anti-abortion laws. And so everybody is waiting in anticipation to see what the Supreme Court will say about this. And we do expect that they're going to rule in favor of the Republican states, considering the conservative nature of the court at this moment. So as I mentioned in the first video on this channel, I did want to do one video that covers a topic for a right-wing perspective that I support, as well as do a video where the issue is one where I support the left-wing perspective, and that is this video here. I am pro-choice. I've always been pro-choice. I do believe that abortion should be legal across the country, that women should in every state have access to that service if they desire. Now, while there might be some non-religious folks who are pro-life for moral reasons, I would say that the majority of pro-life individuals feel that way due to religious reasons. Thus, because I am not religious or spiritual really myself, that probably explains why I am pro-choice. Now, while I might not agree with them, conservatives, pro-life individuals, I do try and understand their perspective and why they feel that way. And one thing I really hate that the left and the right do, both sides do, is they typically attempt to vilify the other side. They'll attempt to turn the argument into one being between good and evil, that they're the good guys, the other side is evil with despicable views. They'll create a straw man argument that they can easily destroy, dismantle, and that is certainly true of this issue, where the left has very clearly mischaracterized the right's opinion on this matter, the right's perspective. So when it comes to your personal feelings on this matter, this issue really comes down to how you feel about life and when it starts. If you believe that life starts at birth, then that fetus is a part of the woman's body. Therefore, that's where that term, my body, my choice, comes from. Therefore, this is part of women's health. This is not a matter that the government should be getting involved in, so on, so on. That's the pro-choice argument. Pro-life argument is that life starts at conception. As soon as that egg is fertilized, that is a fetus, that is life. And therefore, it is the government's job to protect that life. So that's the right wing's position, and the left has mischaracterized, misrepresented, lied about the position of the right, trying to turn into one about sexism, that the right-wingers just want to control women's bodies, that this is about sexism and the patriarchy, that this is just them attempting to make the decisions in a woman's life and not allow her to have autonomy over her own body. And while there might be some on the right who do feel that way, I don't think that's the majority of opinion. I've talked to a lot of people both on the right and the left, and I really do not think that that's the way most people on the right feel. I think it really is about trying to protect the life of an unborn child that they believe is a baby, and that's a life that the government should protect. So what are my issues with the right-wing perspective? Well, first of all, it's uncompromising. If you believe that abortion is murder of an unborn child, then you can't support it, really, morally, you can't support it for any reasons. Now, I'm happy to say that Republicans have actually moved quite a bit on this one. They've actually moved to the left on this one. They've moved a little bit closer to the pro-choice perspective, or at least it seems that way, just based on what I'm seeing with some of these laws that have passed. If you look at the Oklahoma law, which has, again, completely banned abortion even in the first trimester, that bill does make exceptions for rape, incest, as well as to save the life of the mother. Now, that's obviously not very many exceptions, but it's progress. I remember in the 2008 election when Barack Obama was running against John McCain, McCain stated when asked about it that he absolutely did not support abortion, even in the case of rape. And while we have seen some movement here on the part of some Republicans, as illustrated by that Oklahoma bill, which does allow abortion in cases of rape, I would say that the majority of Republicans, the majority of conservatives are not okay with abortion in any case, which again makes sense under their perspective. And that uncompromising perspective is one that I vehemently disagree with. I cannot understand how you could support that policy. Now, I have talked to conservatives with it, and even after many discussions, I still cannot really see their side, see their perspective on this. The most typical conservative defense of this is that she can carry the baby for 9 months, and then when she births it, she can give it up for adoption. And that's just completely unreasonable and just incredibly cruel, in my opinion. For convicted criminals, our government cannot sentence them to cruel or unusual punishment. And yet that's exactly what they're doing to a woman who not only was not convicted of a crime, she is in fact a victim of a crime. And you're further victimizing her with the cruel treatment of forcing her to carry this baby to term. And personally, I just can't fathom that. I don't really know how you have that perspective. That's the one that I just can't get my head around. Do you not know what pregnancy is and how it works? Have you never been around a pregnant woman? 9 months. They're going to be incredibly uncomfortable. It's certainly a beautiful and magical experience, but it's also a very uncomfortable one that has pain and very disruptive to your life overall. Now, of course, as a biological male, I've never been pregnant myself, but I have had 2 children with my wife, so I do recall somewhat what the experience was like, and I don't see how you could sentence a woman to that experience, which again can be a magical, beautiful experience in the right way, but when you're forced onto that from a rape, from a sexual assault, I just don't understand how you then further victimize that woman. So you're essentially saying that woman has to carry that baby for 9 months with everything that comes with that pregnancy, and then after 9 months of that, now they're faced with another difficult decision of choosing to either give the baby up for adoption and all the pain that will be involved with that, or keep the baby for themselves. And every time they look at that child, which is supposed to be a moment of love, you're looking at your child with love, and it's going to remind you of that horrible event of when that child was conceived through rape. I'm sorry, but I just feel like anybody who is so uncompromising on this issue that you feel that even in the cases of rape, abortion should be illegal, I feel like you completely lack compassion. Do you have no compassion for your fellow human being? Do you really feel like that's what our government should be doing? Further victimizing the victims of sexual assault. And it's this uncompromising, cruel idea that I have the most issue with, and it is one that I think that the majority of conservatives do support. I do think the majority of conservatives believe that abortion should be illegal in all cases outside of saving the mother's life. And that's actually another part of the left's mischaracterization of the right-wing perspective on abortion. I've heard a lot of people on the left try and make the argument that they do not support abortion, even in the cases of saving the mother. And that is not what I've seen. It does seem that the majority of Republicans, conservatives, do believe that in that case, you're dealing with one life over another. So in those cases, I do believe that the majority right-wing opinion is to save the mother's life, even if that means that you have to abort the unborn fetus. Now, while that is my biggest issue with the right-wing perspective, it's certainly not my only issue. First of all, I don't think the government should be mandating what we do with our bodies in the first place, as long as it doesn't affect other people. Now, of course, there is that perspective on, do you think that life starts at conception, or do you think it starts at birth? Now, myself, I don't even have an opinion on this matter. I am not a doctor or a healthcare expert. I don't really know when it should be ruled that life starts. I don't think it should be at conception. At the same time, at birth, a baby is viable much earlier than that. And that's one that I will get to a little bit later in the video, something I don't really understand why we're aborting babies in the third trimester who could live outside the womb. I don't really understand that. I actually don't agree with third trimester abortions. I would be fine with states making that illegal, as most states have. Even today, the majority of states, you cannot legally get an abortion in the third trimester, a policy that I very much support. I don't know if the cutoff point should be earlier. What I can say is that the Texas cutoff point, which is when the heart rate is detected, is far too early. It's effectively making abortion illegal. Most women don't typically find out that they're pregnant until between 5 to maybe 7-8 weeks, and the heart rate can often be detected around 5 or 6 weeks. Essentially, that means that women will have maybe a week, maybe less, if any, time to get an abortion. In fact, now that I think about it, with both of our children, when we first found out for sure that we were pregnant, so not just a little at-home test, but when you actually go into the doctor office and they tell you for sure that you're pregnant, with both our children, we were able to hear the heartbeat in the first appointment. So for the majority of women, I think that would be the case. Thus, the appointment where they find out they're officially pregnant, the heart rate is already detectable. So the Texas law, which effectively started this whole new wave of abortion laws, basically bans abortion. And on top of that, is unconstitutional, since it bans abortion in the first trimester, which goes against Roe v. Wade. Now, I'm a firm believer in the idea of my body, my choice, whether it comes to abortion, vaccine mandates, or even the legalization of drugs to a certain extent. I think the government at all levels, federal, state, and local, should stay out of our healthcare decisions. I don't think that's at all within the realm or scope of our government. So I'm pro-choice just based on principle. However, I think there are further arguments to be made. So for example, there are far too many varied and unique situations for every specific person that the government can't possibly mandate when abortion should be allowed and when it should not. And for me, this is all rooted in the idea that there's more to life than just being born. That's just the beginning. You then have to live it. And to illustrate this perspective, this argument, I'm going to use a personal example. So my mother was a Catholic. I was raised Catholic until I was about 7 years old, and then we changed it over to Protestantism. Of course, I would eventually reject Christianity and all religion as I got older. By the time I was about a teenager, I had decided that religion was not for me. Now, as a Catholic, my mom absolutely could not get an abortion. However, she wanted to. She had no interest in having another child. I would have been her second son at that point. She was not interested in having another child, and the man who had impregnated her, my father, was a man that she did not love and was a pretty horrible guy. On top of all that, my mother had no business having children. She had several problems with addiction. She also had some mental illness issues. And as I'm sure I'll further explain on this channel as I make further content, my mother was a horrible parent, and she knew it. She knew she would not make a good parent, so she wanted to get an abortion when she got pregnant with me, and she didn't, largely due to her Catholic faith. As a Catholic, she was not able to. Now, you may think that this personal story would make me more likely to be pro-life, as it was my mother's personal religious convictions that kept her from getting an abortion, and thus I was born and now I'm alive. And if she had gotten an abortion, then I would not be here today. However, it's actually quite the opposite. While I am very happy to be alive today, I'm happy with life, I'm glad at this point that my mom did not get an abortion. But if you gave me the decision today to either give up my life, everything I've lived so far, to give that up, or I get to keep my life, but I have to relive my childhood, it would be a very easy decision for me. I had an absolutely horrible childhood. My mother brought men around my brother and I who she should not have had around children. I was beaten and tortured. I mean, there's really no better word for it. I was tortured. I mean, criminals and terrorists, horrible people get treated better than I did as a child. I would never go back and live that life again, ever. And there are many children today that are facing those exact circumstances. There are horrible people out there who should not be having children. There are drug addicts out there who have no business having children right now. They need to get their life together. They should not be bringing children into their particular world, their world of drugs and abuse and everything else that's in that world. Now, maybe you had a great and perfect childhood, and thus you believe that every child, every unborn child should have the opportunity to have that childhood. And if that was the case, if that was reality, then I would agree with you. Outside of cases of rape, maybe abortion should be illegal, but that is not the case. There are many children that live horrible lives, that have horrible childhoods. And what type of adults do you think the majority of those children become? I come from that life. I can tell you that the majority of people from my childhood did not make it out of it. They're either dead, in prison, or hooked on drugs right now. Eventually, because my mother was such a terrible parent, I ended up in the system, in foster homes, in group homes. Also, not a great place for kids. So you can make the argument, oh, we just take the kids from the horrible parents. Of course, that's not what happens. Most of them will grow up with those parents and be abused by them. But even those the state does take, those aren't perfect situations either. I could tell you that my experiences in those places were not great either. In fact, I had some pretty terrible homes I was in. Now, there was one or two homes that I went to that were decent, but for the most part, it was not a pleasant experience. So you can talk about adoption, and yes, babies are more likely to get adopted, but once a parent has that child and raises them for a few years, long enough to mess them up in the head and screw them up so nobody else wants that child, your chances at that point of getting adopted are pretty low. And that's my other main argument, is the fact that there are just some people that shouldn't be having kids, that child is going to have a horrible experience, a horrible childhood, and many of them may look back on it and would rather have died in the womb than have to go through that experience again. And that's a major gripe I have with the pro-lifers, is they do tend to be conservatives, and conservatives don't overall support state-based welfare. Now, they may support welfare through the church, through religious institutions. That has always historically been inadequate to support the majority of society's poor. In general, conservatives, Republicans do not support state-based welfare, whether it's money or food or any other benefits that you're giving to those living in poverty. And so that's a major problem I have. So you care about this child when they're not born yet. You care that they get the chance at a life. It just seems like to me, they only care about that baby before they're born. Once they're born, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, if that parent is a horrible parent because they never wanted that child, but you forced them to have them, and therefore they treated them like garbage, which is kind of how my mother treated me. She made sure I was very aware that she did not want to have me, and she wanted to get an abortion, and she regretted not doing so. And so you'll have parents that are resentful of their children because they feel like their children ruined their life, and if only they had gotten an abortion, if only they had been able to, but because they weren't, for whatever reason, whether it was religious or because abortion was illegal, they are now resentful for that child and taking it out on them. Conservatives seemingly don't care about that situation. They don't care when a person who's a drug addict decides they probably shouldn't be having a child. They're pregnant. They're worried about the ill effects on that child's health, but they're not able to give up the drugs. They also know that their lifestyle is probably not the best place to raise children, so they decide for themselves that they should get an abortion, but no, in a red state, you say you can't do that. And so now this drug addict is forced to have a child. That child has all the ill effects from those drugs being in their body while they're in the womb, and now they have to live with a drug addict parent who is not at all capable of raising them or giving them a good life. What about those children that are 15, 16 years old, and then they get pregnant because, yes, they made a mistake. They had unprotected sex. God forbid that teenagers with their undeveloped brains make any mistakes. I mean, I believe all of us have made plenty of mistakes that we may regret during our teenage years, and you're going to then penalize that person, destroy their life, because it is destroying their life. Let's be honest. If you're 16 years old and you have a child, maybe you get to live the life you want to. More than likely not. Your experience is going to mostly depend on whether or not you have family and friends to help support you, because if you don't, you're going to have to drop out of high school. Good luck getting a decent job without a high school degree today. So you're going to drop out of high school. You're more than likely going to live a life in poverty. That's what the statistics tell us, that if you have a child before the age of 18, you are very likely going to be poor for the majority of your life. And all that because you made a mistake as a teenager. I guess I just can't get down with that. I just can't understand that perspective. That is a child. You care about children, right? That's a child, and that's a child's life who, because they made one mistake, is going to be destroyed, or at least not the life that they wanted. So that's just a few examples. Obviously, I could go on. The scenarios are countless where abortion may be desired for a particular woman or family or couple, and I just don't think that the government should be determining in which one of those instances it's okay and which ones it's not. But that's what it comes down to for me when it comes to the conservative perspective. Either you're a person who doesn't support abortion at all because it's murder, you consider it to be murder, and therefore even in the case of sexual assault, rape, you do not believe abortion should be allowed, in which case I automatically am going to oppose that argument. Or you're a conservative who believes that abortion should be allowed in certain circumstances, such as in rape or incest, in which case then I say, who are you to decide when murdering a child is allowed or not? If you believe that it's murdering a child, then why would it be okay to do that when it's the sexual assault, when it's rape? That doesn't make any sense, right? And so I feel like you're then compromising your beliefs, in which case then we can pick and choose. You can make the argument that we can pick and choose on which cases the government should allow abortion or not. And then once you start going down that way, you've lost me, because I don't think it's at all within the government's scope or authority to be determining what we should do with our bodies and when it comes to our healthcare decisions. So these are my views on this topic. These are the reasons why I'm pro-choice. However, I do not entirely agree with the left on the abortion topic, and I'd like to discuss some of the things that I disagree with them on. Now, the first you can probably guess because I brought it up earlier in the video, and that is that I do not support third trimester abortions. Again, I don't really know when the cutoff date should be. I think at the very least, though, third trimester abortion should not be allowed, especially if that fetus can live outside the womb, even with machine assistance. So typically that is around 6 or 7 months. For me, that's just a very different circumstance where there's a part of a woman which could not exist without that woman, has to live within her womb, and a fetus that is not just part of a woman, but could actually live, could be a living individual outside the womb. Hey, I just don't understand why we would allow abortion to be legal in those circumstances. So obviously I disagree with many on the left on that point. I guess I don't really understand what their perspective is, even though I've tried to discuss it with them, and it seems to me like they just feel that it's the mother's choice regardless. If she doesn't want the baby to be born, then it shouldn't be, and I have to say I disagree with that. I've heard others make the argument that because it's a very difficult decision, which it is, that a woman needs time to be able to make that decision. And while I do understand that perspective and I'm compassionate with it, I feel like 6 months is plenty of time. You need to make that decision. There is another life involved in this, and I feel like 4, 5, 6 months, that is plenty enough time to make that decision regardless of how difficult it may be. Another point that I have found through heated discussions that many left-wingers disagree with is that I believe in the idea of male abortion. Now, when it comes to the decision of whether or not to get an abortion, that is solely left up to the woman, as it should be. It's her body. She's the one that's going to have to carry that child, and she might also be the one that has to raise that child alone, maybe with financial assistance, but perhaps alone if she does in fact go through with the birth. So she absolutely should be the one that makes that decision whether or not she carries the child to term. However, I think it's very messed up that men have no say in whether or not they have a child. Now, obviously, if a woman decides to have an abortion, then I don't think the father should have any say in that. There's nothing he can do about it. It is what it is. He's not the one carrying that child. That is her decision to make. But let's put it on the flip side. Let's say it's the woman who decides that she wants to have the baby. She wants to carry the baby to term. And the man decides that, at least at this point in his life, he does not want to be a father, and he wants to abort the baby. Well, the father has absolutely no choice in this matter. Now, I agree that the woman should, again, be able to make that choice to have the baby if she wants to. The father has no say in that, but I don't think it's fair or right that the man is then forced to be financially liable for that child for the next 18 years. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I believe a man should be allowed to do a legal abortion, and at that point he should be stripped not just of his parental rights, he should never be able to come back in the future and say that he wants parental rights, but he should also be stripped of any responsibility for the care, financial or otherwise, of that child. Now, I've found over the last couple of years that many on the left very strongly disagree with this perspective, and I really don't get it. I don't understand how you can be pro-choice for women but not for men. Why do men have no say in this? And the argument I typically hear, again, makes no sense. It seems like a right-wing argument to me, is that if he didn't want a child, he shouldn't have got her pregnant, that he should have been responsible, that he should have used one of the many available forms of contraception, like a condom, to ensure that he did not get that woman pregnant. And it just reeks of conservatism, doesn't it? Isn't that the same perspective that the conservatives have made when it comes to opposing abortion? I mean, I swear, it's like word for word what the right-wing argument is that woman should be responsible, that if she didn't want a child, she should have used contraception, and now she has to live with her mistakes. That's the same argument that the right makes for both women and men. So they're at least being consistent. But the left seems to only agree with this argument when it comes to men for some reason. I've also heard leftists argue that it's not fair that that woman decides to have that baby for whatever reasons, perhaps they're religious reasons or just because she wants a child, and now she has to take care of that child alone, and the father can just opt out of that. But I don't see how that's any more fair than the woman being the one who decides whether or not that baby is born or not, and then forcing that decision on the man. And when it comes to the decision to abort, that doesn't really have anything to do with the man, but when it comes to the decision to have the child, it absolutely does. It affects his life, and yet he has no say in it. Now, to be clear, this is not a perspective held by everybody on the left, just the majority of people I've talked on the left, that they do not support the idea of male abortion. And I just think it's very contradictory. You're contradicting yourself, you're being a hypocrite, and you're not really being fair. So to sum up on the issue of abortion, I very much fall on the left. I am pro-choice. However, I do disagree with the left on 2 points, and that is male abortion and third trimester abortions. So I hope you found this channel's first video helpful, entertaining, or whatever you're looking for. I hope you found it. I hope that you also learned a little bit about my perspective and the way I approach each issue. I certainly take my own unique perspective to it, since I am an individual with my own beliefs, my own personal experiences, and those do most definitely affect my feelings on each issue. So if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like it, then leave a dislike. Though please leave a little bit of feedback in the comment. Tell me what you didn't like about it. Maybe it was just my perspective and you don't agree with me, so therefore you're leaving the dislike for that reason. Not very helpful, but understanding. But if it was something that has to do with the actual content, the way that I presented it, the way it was edited, or whatever, the lighting, the sound, if you got any issues, make sure you post it down in the comment below. And if you did enjoy this first episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and again, leave a comment on your thoughts on the episode, on the content. Love to hear from you guys. I do hope to see you guys on the next video, which, remember, that one's going to be about a issue where I support the right-wing perspective. So that video will be out tomorrow. I do hope to see you on it, and thanks for watching.